My work and my play take me to all 50 states, but Alabama is still my home. Alabama is where I live, and Alabama is where I vote. I'm Taylor Hicks, and I want you to be a registered voter and to have a qualified government-issued photo ID so you can vote too. Alabama has so much to offer. Let's do all we can to make her the best state she can be.
Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, the policy man cometh. Also, the V-Team takes a look at a very criminal Court of Appeals. And Governor Ivey says, I feel wonderfully well.
Yes, and what a lovely morning. Good morning.
Good morning. We've talked the whole night through.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning. It's great to stay up late. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Okay, let's tamp it down just a little. No step too high for high stepper. Right. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Look who's back.
I'm back.
Yeah.
I survived most of finals, so here we are.
Well, and Susan, last week you were complaining about all the men, and I am not complaining the least bit.
It's going the Blondes,
It is.
the new and improved edition.
There you go.
You know, the amazing thing is every one of you is so smart that it doesn't matter that you're all good looking.
Thank you. Thank you.
I guess that's not inappropriate, is it? Is
Not
that
at all.
inappropriate?
You're not my boss, so we're fine.
I won't get sued for that, or
I'm not a lawyer. I can't give legal advice.
okay, Charlie.
Who's HR around here?
Charlie, good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
You were there. We interviewed Governor Ivey this week, and she really went over a great many things. One, her accomplishments over the last year. Another one was she's standing by the controversial HB 317. She praised her staff, her cabinet, and she really says she's ready to go. But she is not the grandmotherly figure, is she?
Not at all. She certainly fills up a room, but she did what she said she was going to do. She steadied the ship of state. That was a big focal point. She brought jobs back to Alabama. She was very adamant about discussing that, and I was overall impressed with her and everything she's done so far.
Susan, I mean, she's no shrinking violet, and she let us know that during the interview, didn't she?
She's never been a shrinking violet. That's
You
one
don't
of the
get
things
to where she is being one either.
Exactly, especially from the era she came from, fighting through all that as a woman. I mean, it's a pretty impressive career. But no, she's not a shrinking violet, and she will not shrink down from any of the problems that we've had in the state. The one thing I was encouraged by, too, when we start to get into some of the things she said, was you asked her about the ethics law, strengthening or clarifying the ethics law. Should it be done in full or done in piecemeal? And she said, let's get it all done.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled to hear that.
And Beth, she didn't commit to doing it in a special session, but she didn't rule it out. And I'm in favor of doing the ethics reform if we're going to do it in a special session where we're focused. But again, we're hearing the Republican leadership say that the laws are too strict or too vague. It sounds like to me they want to escape the laws that they wrote 8 years ago.
Right, well, it's probably one of the first times I'll ever agree with Governor Ivey on anything, that it's pretty simple. You read the law, you follow the law. If you have a question, you ask your attorney and you do what they say. I mean, it's really just that plain and simple. My fear about having a special session is these Looney Tunes do not know how to stay on track. If you say, come to a special session for the purpose of bacon and apple pie, you will get a 12-course meal, but you will not get an apple pie. And that's what I'm afraid of, is
You're
that they're going to get in there
right
and we'll get
about
something completely
Well, and
different.
I could be wrong. I just, you know, I would hope they would, Susan, there's a task force supposedly being put together. Governor Ivey said they had not asked her for her picks yet. You know, there's got to be a lot of prep time to go into rewriting these ethics laws. But my fear is that, like this session, they're just going to try to weaken them. They're not going to try to strengthen them.
Well, and we're talking about being in there in that State House in July and August, which is miserable to start with, and the fact that it's campaign season. They're not focused on anything but re-election, trying to get that bunch down there to get any accomplishments. Like you said, we're not going to get our apple pie. We're probably going to get a bigger mess.
Well, another thing that Governor Ivey brought up that I thought was a good point, and Beth hit on part of it. When we asked her after 8 years under these laws, we've looked at you and you've never put a toe out of line that we can find. And she said, that's because I read the laws and follow them. And she said it was that easy for every lawmaker. She really did. The other thing, Beth, is she said there was a new way that we should select the Ethics Commission. And I thought that was pretty inspiring. Did you get to read about that, or do I need to?
If you can tell us a little more about it, Bill. You know, I've been engrossed in property law the past few weeks.
Yeah, I could tell that we hadn't, you probably hadn't gotten to that, but during the interview, she said, you know, it strikes me as weird, or perhaps dangerous, that the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House appoint the ethics commissioners.
To whom they are accountable.
Right.
So she said, why don't we have it to the, you know, the Supreme Court, the head of the Supreme Court, the presiding judge of the Criminal Court of Appeals, the presiding judge of the Civil Court of Appeals. I bet makes more sense, doesn't it?
It does, and I've been saying for a while we need to do something about the way these people are appointed. I still like the idea of just picking a lottery of 10 random people and asking them if things pass the smell test. But I think this is a step in the right direction. But remember, judges in Alabama are elected, and they are also accountable to not just these laws, but the rules of judicial ethics as well.
And I think that's something Kay Ivey did point out. She said they are responsible to, there is a court that oversees them.
Oh yeah, and I hadn't thought about it at all until she said that, and it just made so much more sense.
Yeah, and they're not beholden to the legislature. They're not beholden to the governor's office.
They're beholden to JIC, and we see
Exactly.
that.
That's a whole nother story.
But I mean, again, that is the check and balance on them. You know, you can't get these nonsense rulings. I mean, right now, this Beth, and you know this, this ethics commission will rule whatever's in favor of their best buddy at the time. I mean, it seems like.
Oh yeah, definitely. And when you look at judges too, you know, if a state legislator does something wrong and they lose their ability to sit as a legislator, they go back to their 9 to 5, whatever consulting gig it is they've got, and they continue on with their jobs. But if a judge does something that violates the rules of judicial ethics, that has the potential to get a bar complaint. If they get disbarred, there goes their livelihood. And after struggling through law school, I'm not doing anything to get disbarred.
We got about 1 minute left, but I do want to get to Senator Richard Shelby has been appointed chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. That means that he holds the purse strings for the entire United States of America, and he's our guy.
Right, yeah, and he's also the second in command on the military committee.
Well, yeah, on the subcommittee, he's the chair of the subcommittee on defense. So, yeah.
Right, so he's got a lot of money at his discretion, but I think, I mean, if I got to pick a Republican, I'm okay with Shelby, but mostly because he's got women like Katie Britt behind him, and I trust Katie Britt. She's a smart girl.
Yeah, he's got an office full of Southern Alabama females in there with him, and we know that they're going to make sure that everything goes well.
That's really something to be revered.
Well, I mean, listen, I agree with y'all. And the other thing is Senator Shelby, whether you like him or not, has always brought home the bacon to Alabama, Susan.
Right.
He can bring a whole side of beef,
he can bring a
side of pork
down here, and it's very important with him being on the subcommittee for defense because we have all of that up there in the Huntsville area that's involved in defense. So that's
and
very
in the wiregrass.
And in the wiregrass, you're right about that. So.
Well, we congratulate Senator Shelby. We congratulate Katie Britt and Blair and Alicia, who's the new person on the staff. Thank y'all for doing such a great job for our state. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
Autism has touched the lives of so many here in Alabama. It's why State Senator Tom Whatley stood up to the special interests and sponsored the bill requiring insurance plans to provide autism therapy to those in need. Because Tom Whatley knows this therapy can and does change lives. And Whatley was recently recognized by the Autism Society of Alabama for his work helping the autism community. Putting people before politics. Tom Whatley.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, this week, I guess we could say celebrated a year without Bentley. Robert Bentley resigned on the 10th of April, 1 year ago, and Governor Ivey took over. But you know, we're still living, no matter, Bentley's gone, but we're living with his disgraceful legacy and the people he left behind.
And that was a long day in itself, April 10th last year. Reporters from all over the world were here, but you're right, the legacy's still there. We still got the paranoia from Rebecca Mason that ended up with Steve Marshall being our AG, with, you know, the situation we had with the Roy Moore. There's still a lot of those pieces that are still hanging out there that have not been resolved.
I mean, Beth, you know, it's just kind of crazy that, you know, and only one governor in the last basically 2 decades wasn't found guilty of some kind of crime. And if you have to go all the way back to Albert Brewer.
And let's be honest, the one that wasn't convicted of a crime is probably the one that should have been convicted of all the crimes, right?
You mean
Bob Riley?
Yeah.
Yes, oh my God. Like the one that got away is the one that should have gone for all of it.
Well, you know what? And I bless their hearts, the press loved Bob Riley.
They did.
And they did not investigate him.
Well, the jury didn't, that's for sure.
No.
But, Charlie, I mean, imagine that the fact that out of the last four governors, 3 of them were, you know, found guilty of some type of crime. I mean, that's a bad batting average, you know?
That's really terrible for Alabama, and I don't really have a whole lot to say other than just, actually, I don't have anything to say.
Let's be better.
It leaves you dumbfounded, right?
Well, you have to go back to Albert Brewer in the 70s to find an administration that didn't have at least 1 felony. I mean, Beth, this is why, and I'm not even kidding, this is why we can't have nice things, because we have terrible, terrible leadership.
I mean, that's what it looks like. And I mean, when you look back over the track record, like love them or leave them when it comes down to, you know, what happened with Siegelman and what's happened with everybody else, you know, I still think Bentley's legacy is the one that's just, it will leave an impact for years to come. And look what he did to people's lives, to people like Spencer Collier, and to people, and arguably, he's the reason why Alabama now has a Democrat senator, is because his appointment of Luther Strange in exchange for, you know, like that whole thing spiraled into a Democrat winning.
And you know, really, that's a great point. I mean, we have Steve Marshall now, who's the Attorney General, who is refusing, Susan, to prosecute cases, holding hostage the Special Prosecution Unit, because he doesn't want to make big donors mad. I mean, who in the world, this guy should be, there's no mechanism to get rid of him, I guess.
Aren't some of his donors, though?
Voters.
Yeah, we can vote in November.
But yeah, he's got $1.3 million in the bank. Of course, they spent $23 million trying to get Luther to be senator, but nevertheless, he's got money like Harbert. He's got money coming out of PACs that are known to be Jimmy Rain PACs. We know who these folks are.
And Harvard's Will Brooke,
it's
right?
Will Brooke.
Which was
Raymond Harvard personally donated to Steve Marshall's campaign.
Yeah, but
Will Brooke is who they're
and look,
who they're after.
I mean, Charlie, Business Council of Alabama and unindicted co-conspirator Billy Canary just gave him $100,000.
I just don't understand how the audacity behind it. Like knowing everything that's been going on, knowing with the investigation, I don't understand.
And Mike Hubbard's still out pending appeal. Let's not forget.
Let's not forget that he took $2,500 from Rob Riley's company. And he's still representing Mike Hubbard.
Yeah, Rob Riley is Mike Hubbard's attorney.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So our attorney general.
That's what leaves me dumbfounded.
I can't with you folks.
Our
Riley Jackson.
appointed attorney general is taking money from the same people that gave money to Hubbard that got him convicted, and also his lawyers. I mean, in what parallel universe do we live?
A banana republic is what it's called.
Apparently.
I want to move on.
Let's vote in November.
Bentley should and will go down as the absolute worst governor the state has ever had, and he can quote the Bible until his head explodes. He will be nothing more than just dumb trash to me.
Well, and he was all about his legacy. Well, guess what? You got one, and it's a humdinger, baby.
All right, Beth, we got a serious problem.
Talk about humdingers and Bentley.
Oh, God, no. I love that too. Speaking of, Beth, we've got something. We've only got a little over 2 minutes. We've got something that's happening on the Democratic side that we don't ever hear about in Alabama politics. Walt Maddox, who's the current mayor of Tuscaloosa, is actually running for governor, and he's issuing policies.
Like
we don't
real
do
white
policy
papers.
here. Yeah, we don't do that.
Yeah, I mean,
I have words on them and everything.
And not written in crayon. Look at him go. I'm proud of him.
You're on it today.
Well, and I think, too, it's, to have somebody that's vocalizing what it is that Democrats stand for is valuable right now, because we have, in a lot of ways, become the party that's, we're against this and we're against that. And like, no, we need somebody that can actually step forward and articulate, this is what a Democrat believes, and if you're with us, then maybe you should vote Democrat, because I think a lot of people just don't know.
And it's so refreshing, a candidate actually talking about a plan or what they believe in, or just not spitting out sound bites or what the base wants to hear all the time.
That's what I'm relieved to see real initiative from one of the candidates.
Well, and I'm a believer, but I am so tired of people running by beating the cover off the King James Bible.
Absolutely.
Or the new Bible. But listen, I know he's a faith guy, but he's coming up with policies. His strongest asset, I think, Chandler, is going to be his wife.
I think so too. Isn't she a Republican?
Yes, she is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Behind every great man's a better woman, right,
There you
Susan?
go.
Well,
In training.
No truer words have been spoken. But I do think it's interesting, because you can explain that. I asked Ms. Maddox, I said, Mayor Maddox, I said, how are you going to convince Republicans to vote for you? And his wife stood forward. She said, one at a time, just like he convinced me. And I was like, what? And she goes, I'm a Republican. He had to convince me to marry him. So I think he can convince the people of Alabama. It's like a house divided, isn't it, Beth? Like Auburn and Alabama.
Yeah, I've always said I can do one deal breaker. It's either that he's got to be an Auburn fan but be a Democrat, or he's got to be or he's got to be an Auburn fan and he can be a Republican, or he's got to be an Alabama fan but he can be a Democrat. I can't do both.
Yeah,
That's a good way to do it. I like that.
I can only deal with one of you.
You really can't have that much division, right?
No,
Susan?
you can't have that much division. You know that personally.
Yeah.
And it's all in November too, right? You got the Iron Bowl and elections happening in November. We
You're
would just
right
have
about
to
that.
move to the beach house.
On one of our first dates, I showed up in an Auburn jacket and an Alabama T-shirt. And
I wouldn't let him in the house.
No.
I said,
I
I
wouldn't
don't care
either.
which one
Smart
you go,
woman.
you choose. Go outside, make up your mind, but I am not going out. You'll get me killed.
Also, how did you match those things together? I
Why
bet you
would you
looked
have done that?
ridiculous.
it took
God.
talent. Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
Hey, I'm Rick.
And I'm Bubba from the Rick and Bubba Show. And if you know anything about us, you know we like to have fun.
However, there's one thing that's no laughing matter. We believe that everyone should be registered to vote, and they should have a qualified government-issued photo ID.
In order to have your voice heard and your vote counted, you must be registered to vote and have a photo ID.
Join Bubba and me and register to vote, and let's work together to make Alabama all it can be.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Famed New York Yankees player Yogi Berra said, "It's amazing what you can observe when you're watching." And we look back. I know it's as silly as it sounds. He also said, "It's deja vu all over again."
As well as many other quotes.
Yeah, well, it ain't over till it's over.
Yeah.
But one of the things we observed as we were watching is that recently the case against Bentley was they found a no bill because the laws were too vague or not specific enough, blah, 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 blah. We went back and I found a story that I had written for APR in 2012 where Ellen Brooks, the same prosecutor, said that she couldn't find how to charge Bob Riley and Mike Hubbard for campaign finance, for breaking campaign finance laws in PAC-to-PAC transfers. And they listed all of them and everything. And she said, well, I just couldn't tell a grand jury because it was just too vague and too vague.
Too vague.
Unspecific.
Unspecific.
Deja
Same
vu
thing
all
all
over
over
again.
again. Same ethics law, same verdict. Even though Matt Hart went in and got Mike Hubbard on 12 of them, they weren't very vague then. I don't know what makes them vague now.
Well, Beth, I mean, the crazy thing is here's Bob Riley and Mike Hubbard right after the elections. They break the laws that they just passed, and Ellen Brooks says, well, we can't do anything about it. It's too vague. 8-month investigation, couldn't get there.
Well, I wonder how hard she tried in that case. I mean, just because some of these things are so cut and dry, you don't have to be a lawyer to be able to understand when you read the statute. It says it right there in black and white. Just read the words and put the pieces together, and a grand jury can see that.
You know, I have to wonder how much oversight Marshall had in this, because you remember Marshall was Bentley's guy. Marshall got appointed by Bentley. Marshall appointed Ellen Brooks, and I'm not accusing her of anything. I'm just saying, I wonder how much he was looking over her shoulder during all of this process.
Well, he was, I think, probably recused, but mainly in name only. But,
in name only.
I mean, Charlie, it is kind of strange that, you know, in 2012, Ellen Brooks couldn't find a way to charge former Governor Riley and Speaker of the House Mike Hubbard, and then she couldn't find a way to get Bentley.
That's what gets me. I mean, you can't come up with any other defense in two like major public official cases. That's the best. Like that's the best she can come up with. That's
too vague and unspecific.
Yep.
Too, well, it's kind of crazy. I don't get it, Beth. But there we have it. I have been complaining for some time now that the Court of Criminal Appeals for the state of Alabama will not rule on Mike Hubbard's case. I say will not rule because they have not ruled. Beth, they have had all the briefs, all the final briefs for 11 months. They've looked over murder cases, they've looked over all kinds of appeals, but they still have not ruled on Mike Hubbard's case. Judge Jacob Walker really did a great job of holding that together. Why do you think it's taken them so long?
Well, I mean, there's like the obvious things like our court system's backlogged and yada, 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 and this is a huge case file that somebody's got to be able to go through and comb through. But, I mean, remember, too, I don't know what bearing it has on the Court of Criminal Appeals, but Mike Hubbard is not in jail waiting his appeal. He's, I guess, at home in Lee County.
Traveling.
He's been out and
baseball
about.
games.
Yeah, right. And so the fact that, like, he's not, I think the fact that he's not in jail, like his rights are not being impaired pending appeal, is letting them take some time to really look over it. I wish they'd get on about it, because I'd love to be able to start sending him the love notes in jail. I promised him.
Well, you know, and I appreciate your taking such a broad view. My view, Susan, is that these are elected judges. They do not want to step on anybody's toes. I believe they're going to wait till 2019 and let the next bunch take it.
I'm beginning to believe that's true. Of course, you know, if all goes well, we've got two really good judges coming.
I wouldn't mention they might not get on the.
That's true. We won't go there. But anyway, I know it'll be a different court if it is in 19. If we have to wait, that'll be a good decision.
Charlie, one of the, I call them criminal court of appeals judges, Lyles Burke, has been nominated to the federal bench. And I wrote a letter this week to Senator Shelby's office and to Senator Jones's office and asked, how can you support a man for the federal bench who will not rule in the Mike Hubbard case when they've had 11 months?
That's what confuses me about the whole thing. I mean, how can you openly give your support to someone who's blatantly not following the law?
Well, at least not ruling on it.
Ruling on it. Okay, I'll give you that.
Well, I would agree with you, but you know, I don't want to get in too much trouble here. But you know, again, I think this is political. It is not judicial.
Well, yeah, no, I think there's no doubt it's political, but I mean, if you're looking at reasons why, if we're giving a benefit of the doubt, there's some other reasons why it could be. But I think looking at it, there's no reason why these same judges, many of whom don't have challengers, would want to go into an election with this stuff hanging over their head. I mean, if I were consulting against it, I would say hit them on not ruling.
Right, and that's the thing. They're just not doing it, Susan. And listen, I'm still waiting back to hear from Senator Shelby and Senator Jones. I want to move on to this last thing. Judge Roy Moore has asked that he has Lee Corfman have brought a defamation suit against him. She's suing him in Montgomery County. He wants that moved to Etowah County, where they're both from, and now he's turned around and sued her.
Well, I think Etowah County is probably the better venue. There's 3 reasons for that. She's from Etowah County, Judge Moore's from Etowah County, and the alleged offense happened in Etowah County, not in Montgomery County. Yeah, what it is we've got a San Francisco law firm coming in here and thinking, well, they're going to get a more sympathetic jury in Montgomery. And I can understand that, except for I think it's supposed to be, you know, a jury of your peers. Jury of your peers are in Etowah County, not Jefferson.
Well, and I tend to agree with you. I mean, listen, if they've got a good case, I mean, just let it play out. I mean, Charlie, the other thing is she's accused him of defamation. Now he's accusing her of defamation. So
I don't really see an end to this. I feel like they're just going to keep butting heads and butting heads. I want to see what the end result of this all is.
Well, I bet that's not going to be pretty either way.
There's 2 things to keep in mind, though, from this, and again, not a lawyer, but the big thing is, where does Roy Moore live right now when you're trying to get venue and jurisdiction
Etowah County.
in a case?
Etowah County.
So that's where, and then if the campaign is being named, and the campaign may be based in Montgomery, there's a lot of reasons. So that's probably why, because you have to bring it where the defendant is. And in that case, if it's the campaign,
now, let me ask you this. Bill Clinton may have said this first. That depends on what the meaning of is. But we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.